All right, so now let's see this particular question. So over here, we are given a system and it runs one task every day, right? And this particular task on any given day can actually fail or it can succeed, right? If it fails, then its entry for that particular corresponding date will be made in the fail table. And if it succeeds, its entry will be made for that particular day in the succeeded table, right? Now, what we need to do is we need to write a solution to report the period state for each continuous interval of days in the period from 1st of Jan 2019 to 31st of December 2019. That is for the entire 2019 year only, right? And period state is failed if tasks in this particular interval failed, or it is succeeded if tasks in this particular interval are succeeded, all succeeded, right? And interval of days are retrieved as start date and end date, right? So essentially what we need to do is we need to find consecutive date ranges, like series of consecutive days where continuously it either succeeded, the task either succeeded or the task either just failed, right? For all the days in that particular consecutive interval of days, right? So that's what we need to identify. And then for each of these, consecutive days period, we need to report the date range start date and then the end date of that particular date range. And also what is the common state for that entire period, entire continuous interval of days. What is that common period is something that we need to report, right? Now, maybe you can just pause this video and try to think of a solution. And once you are done, you can just come back and check the solution here. So now to solve this, what we can do is, first of all, we can combine both these tables and we can union them to have one single table. And we can also maintain a flag for the status uh, so that we can know like whether this particular record of any given date is coming from the failed table or it is coming from the succeeded table, right? So that way we will also have an identifier that whether the task actually failed for that day or it succeeded, right? So we can just have a derived column, a flag column, which will hold whether that task on this particular date succeeded or failed, right? And now what we can do is we can just partition on the status this new derived column, and then we can assign row numbers to all the row sets under each partition, right, of failed and succeeded, right? Now, once we have the row numbers, now what we need to do is we need to figure out like the objective that we have to solve is that we need to figure out all the consecutive days for each of the partition, right? Under the failed, I need all the like consecutive date ranges period, all the groups of the consecutive days, and also under the succeeded partition, I similarly need all the consecutive date periods, right? There will be different segments, different groups of consecutive days for each of the partition, which I need to identify, right? So once I assign row numbers to each of the partitions, what now I can do is I can actually subtract, you know, the corresponding row numbers from the corresponding dates, right? And if I do that, I will get a resultant date, right? And that resultant date will be same wherever the days are actually appearing consecutively, right? So for example, if I talk about these four rows, they will get the row numbers like 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So these two rows, if you see, they are consecutive, right? And row number for this is 3, row number for this is 4. If I subtract 3 from 4th of Jan, it will be 1st of Jan. Similarly, if I subtract 4 from 5th of Jan, it will be again 1st of Jan, right? So wherever I'm getting the same resultant date by doing this particular operation, I can say that those series of days or those groups of days are actually consecutive in nature, right? And since I've already partitioned by the status, that is failed or succeeded, I can just report the corresponding value of the status along with that the minimum and the start date of that entire group that I have recognized by the virtue of that result date. I can just report that as my output, right? So I hope you understood. And this is how actually you identify consecutive dates, right? Or even consecutive IDs, right? It can be anything, like in general it could be anything, but whenever you need to identify consecutive data like consecutive date itself, this is the approach actually that you can follow. You can assign row numbers and then you can take the difference, right? And this is something that I have talked about in great detail while I was discussing about another problem. I will share the link of that particular problem with this video, and then you can go through it if you need to understand it better, right? So now maybe let's jump to the IDE and try to write a solution for this. All right, so now let's write the query that we just discussed. So first of all, as we were saying that we will have to uh, basically union both the tables. So I can select fail date from my fail table like this, and then I can union it with succeeded table, right? So I can say select from succeeded, right? And over here I will select, maybe I can select star because there is only going to be one column, one date, right? And I also need to select the status, which will be a derived column, hard-coded for each of the tables. So it will be succeeded over here, right? And it will be failed over here. And I can just rename this to status maybe, right? And also this one I can rename to date, because now it will have both the dates, not just the fail date, right? And if I run this, this will give me the combination of union of both the tables, right? Like this, which is fine. Now what I need to do is now I need to partition on the status, assign row numbers, and then take the difference, right? So what I will do is now I will put this in a CT underscore maybe union, right? And then what I can do is now I will select on top of this, right? And what I can do is I can assign row numbers, right? I can either first just assign the row numbers and then take difference separately, or straight away in just one shot, like in just one expression, I can take the difference by from the row numbers directly, right? So what I mean is I can directly use the dateAdd function over here, right? I have to subtract day, right? And then what do I need to subtract? I need to subtract the row number that I'm going to take, right? So I will say row number over partition by status, right? Order by date, right? This is what I need to subtract. And from what do I need to subtract this? I need to subtract this from the date column, right? From each of the date, I need to subtract the corresponding row number that I'm going to get, right? And this, I can just alias this as rest date, like this, right? And now also like one more filter that we need to apply is that we only need to consider the dates in the year 2019. So I think it's a good place to put that filter as well. I will just say where my year of date directly is equal to 2019, right? Now if I run this will give me the resultant date after subtracting the row numbers from the date, right? This will be my resultant date. And now all I need to do is I need to group by my result date and the status, right? So that will give me the continuous date ranges wherein this particular task either succeeded or it failed, right? That's what I need to do now. So what I can say is I can actually put this in another CT just for simplicity and clarity in reading. So CT res date maybe, right, as this. And now what I can do is I can select from, this particular CT I just declared date, right? And then I can group by status and rest date, right? This is what I need to do. And also I need to order by the start date, because that's what is given in the question, that we need to return the result ordered by the start date, right? So which is fine. Now I can just select these two columns over here, right? And this status will be nothing but the period state that we were seeing in the sample output, right? Like this. And what I need to do is that I don't need the rest date, because this was just like a tool for me to calculate, to get all the groups, to group all the consecutive days, right? But what I need is I now need to get the start date and the end date for all the groups, right? So what I can do is I can just take the minimum of the date, right? And that will be my start date. And also I can take the maximum of the date, and that will be my uh, end date for that particular date range period entirely, right? Now, if I run this, this should be my absolute final output, the period date, and I can just, for the sake of consistency, make it small, run it again. And if you see now, we have the period state, the start date, and the end date, just as what we saw in the sample output. So I hope you understood the entire concept behind it. And also like if you want to get into more details of you know, how do we find these consecutive dates or consecutive IDs, how it is working. If it is still not clear to you, maybe what you can do is you can just follow the link that I will be sharing with this particular video, and you can try to solve that particular problem also. It will be a practice for you. And if not, you will, you know, get to know about, you know, this consecutive dates or how to identify them even better, right? So that's it about this particular video, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.